Kim, the future of Brexit, what is it?
It's about the negotiations going on in London today between the government and the opposition. It's about the hope that they will find common ground and a consensus, which we would then hope gets supported by the House of Commons on Monday, and then the Prime Minister will take that to the European Council on Wednesday next week, ask for an extension, but if there is agreement on a package in the British Parliament, then we only need a technical extension, maybe until the 22nd of May, to get the necessary legislation through. So that's the path forward. That's plan A now.
There's just a little bit of fantasy in there, though. Is there, Sir Kim? I mean, did you ever think, for example, that you would see the Conservatives and Labour negotiate over something that couldn't be got through Parliament because the Conservatives couldn't agree among themselves?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the voting patterns, there is disagreement in both the main parties about the route forward. Also, I think this is an issue that has divided the country, and Parliament is reflecting that. It's also an extremely important and serious issue, and it's right that parliamentarians should think carefully about how best to represent the interests of their constituents on it. But we've now reached the point where we need an agreement, we need a deal, we need a way forward. And I think it was a brave and very principled step by the Prime Minister in the light of the parliamentary defeats on the government's package, but on all the other options that were put forward for the indicative votes, to say, let's just see if we can work with the opposition to find a package, to find a deal that the majority in Parliament can support. So I think it was the right step to take this week, and you know, I'm very hopeful that will provide the deal we've been looking for.
Ambassador, if the United Kingdom stays in a customs union with the EU, how will that change the nature of the relationship with the United States? Well,
I mean, that's taking quite a leap ahead. But look, there is, I mean, there's a hugely important trading relationship and inward investment relationship between the UK and the US. They're our single biggest bilateral trading partner. 22% of our exports go to the US. And I think there is a great deal of potential to increase that. A free trade deal is one way forward. But there are lots of other things that we can do as well in terms of, I don't know, regulatory alignment, removing barriers to trade, encouraging exporters to look to the American market. So there are many ways in which we can take forward UK-US trade. But look, what we would like is a deal that delivers what the British people voted for in June 2016, and that allows us to strike new free trade deals with our most important trading partners, with the US in the first place on that. So let's see where we end up in the next few days.
Has the UK's credibility as a counterparty to the United States been damaged as a result of the crisis we've seen over Brexit, do you think?
Guy, what I find is that a lot of Americans ask me now about what is going on in Brexit. They mainly just want to understand what is happening in our Parliament, how the government is handling all of this as the clock ticks down to that new deadline of 12 April. And as you take them through the parliamentary process and you explain that this is democracy in action, I think people are generally supportive and they're confident that we will find a way through. I mean, a lot of people are watching all of these parliamentary events live. The Speaker's become something of a cult figure in America now. And so people are, you know, around Washington, certainly a lot of people are watching all of this, and they want to know what it all means. But I think there's a lot of confidence, both in our institutions and in the government, that we will find a way through that delivers what people voted for, but that also creates a good environment for the future of UK-US relations. So once you explain to people what's happening, people are both reassured about where we are and hopeful and confident about the future.
But the sands keep shifting. That's also part of the problem, Sir Kim, right? I mean, a few days ago, the Prime Minister was dependent on the DUP. Now the DUP is nowhere to be seen, and it's suddenly Jeremy Corbyn, who, by the way, doesn't mind if there are European parliamentary elections in Britain in the next few weeks, whereas Theresa May really has a problem with that, as do Conservatives. And part of the problem is that people didn't know exactly what was being voted for. It was just a concept, and that concept hasn't really been fleshed out in any way that's acceptable to everybody. Is it your base case that a fourth vote on Theresa May's deal gets done?
Look, I think we need to see how the negotiations between the government and the opposition go today and whether they can reach an agreement. As you know, that if they can't, there is a plan B, which is some more votes on options on Monday that might emerge from Parliament. I think that's another way forward. The objective is to find something that Parliament can support before the Prime Minister goes to Brussels on Wednesday. And that would allow her to ask for just a short extension to 22 May while we get the necessary legislation through. So in a sense, the government's plan hasn't changed, but they are understandably looking at, and rightly looking at, every option to find a package that Parliament can support. And as I've said, I understand why Britain's MPs are taking this so seriously and are, in a way, struggling to find the right way forward, because this is such an important decision. But now, am I confident we'll find a way through? Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm. Well, you were chair of the National Police Council at one point, obviously also National Security Advisor to Prime Minister David Cameron at the time in 2012, 2015. How concerned are you about, outbreaks of conflict or violence even in the case of a no-deal Brexit, which the Europeans see as more of a likelihood than they did before? And after all, police do have officers, 10,000 of them, at the ready to deploy at 24 hours notice in this case.
Yeah, Vonnie, it's right that we have made preparations and that we have looked at what might happen. But one of the encouraging things about the last few weeks, I think, is how this extraordinarily important debate has basically been conducted in the right institution, in Parliament. There's a lot of interest in it. There's a lot of public attention. I've phoned my friends back in the UK. They're all talking about Brexit, but it's happening in Parliament. And yes, there are peaceful demonstrations pro and against Brexit outside Parliament, and I've been back in the UK recently and seen those happening. But Parliament is the place where this is happening. That shows public confidence in institutions, and I think that the British people will respond peacefully and correctly to whatever decision emerges from Parliament. And I think what most people want is they want an answer to this. They want this deal done, and that's certainly the government's intention over the next few days.
Ambassador, the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, now has a seat at the table. If Her Majesty's government was headed by Jeremy Corbyn, how would the US security services, the US security authorities, how would the White House react to that?
I'm very confident that whatever democratic outcome there is in the UK from Brexit or from whenever there is a general election in the future, that there will be a strong relationship between the UK and the US. And I'm particularly confident that the whole defence and national security and intelligence relationship, which is crucial to both sides, which is one of the major foundation stones of the UK-US relationship, will flourish whatever. I can tell you now that it's as strong, if not stronger, than it has ever been. The level of cooperation, defence forces, security agencies is stronger than ever, and I'm absolutely confident that will continue.
Ambassador, one of the stories that Europe is watching very carefully at the moment is the outcome of the trade talks that are taking place between the United States and China. We have, obviously, a meeting in the White House to discuss that very issue this afternoon. The fear is that once that deal is done, that the White House will turn its attention to Europe. Is that something you hear in Washington when you're talking to people there?
You're right that the US-China trade talks are important for all of us. They're important for the global economy. And there's another round of those talks in the next few days. And we're all looking for a successful outcome, which can benefit all of us, by the way, especially if some of the barriers in the Chinese market are brought down. You're also right that the President and the administration are unhappy about some aspects of their trade relationship with the European Union, particularly unhappy about lack of access for some of their products. I mean, the European side of that argument is there are good health and safety reasons why some American products can't get into the European Union, but that is an issue that the Americans want to pursue and debate. There are talks going on at the moment between the EU and the US, so plan A is that those should reach a successful conclusion. And the US trade negotiator and the EU trade negotiator, I think they met a few weeks back and they will meet again soon. So let's hope those talks produce a successful conclusion and a new trade agreement between the EU and the US. But it's important for us that free trade continues and that we build on that relationship, whether in the future in a UK-US deal or currently while we're in the EU, an EU-US process.
Sir Kim, what's your best guess as to when the next general election will be?
I think that's for the government and for Parliament, not for me to speculate on. But right. What we should focus on is getting an agreement in our Parliament in the next few days on a Brexit package that we can then take to that European Council on Wednesday.